Hello everybody. So I'm pleased to let you know that my Patreon community voted for me to cover IREN, and so I am covering IREN. IREN is a stock that I own, and I've been building my position slowly in IREN. It takes me a while to build my positions, but I'm buying IREN regularly, adding to it as it drops, and I do believe that IREN now is a very cheap stock, and I'm going to show you this, no financial advice, but I'm going to show you this based on the adjusted enterprise value, which is kind of my question answered is, if I were to sell everything, if I were to sell all of the parts of a business, how much money could I get? And we know that I use enterprise value a lot on the channel, which I love because it removes the cash from the valuation, adds back the debt. I think it's fair, right? Cash is obviously something that you can sell right away, but I want to adjust for that for also highly sellable items like miners. Miners, they are very marketable items. They are a form of money. You can sell them, and they're correlated to Bitcoin too when the value goes down, which is a minus for any Bitcoin miner. When you buy any Bitcoin miner or anything in that space, the value of the equipment goes down very quickly, and so that's a downside. But yet right now, if we take an instantaneous picture, their miners have a certain value, so I'm going to try to ascertain that. Then the value of their GPUs. This is a company that does AI computing. They sell AI compute, and so they own Nvidia GPUs, and I would argue that the Nvidia GPUs value also drops perhaps as fast as Bitcoin, perhaps a little less than Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is highly correlated to the price of Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin mining equipment is correlated to the price of Bitcoin. The value of the GPUs is correlated to the speed at which AI moves, and of course AI moves very fast right now, which means that the value of GPUs may go down even more. And then the value of power access, and this is what I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about in this video. What is the value of that power access? But more importantly, this is a bet on energy and on power access at IREN, because even though GPUs are going to lose value, the Bitcoin miners are going to lose value. They don't hold Bitcoin. This is a miner that does not hodl Bitcoin, and so they're not going to see an appreciation for the Bitcoin. The one aspect that they're going to see an appreciation for, in my view, is their access to power. And I will focus only on the power and not on the buildings and villainous presentation. Let me get started thus with part A of this analysis, which is the value of the miners. So figuring out the value of the miners is a tough game, because I would argue it's an inverted U shape where eventually the mining equipment is gonna be worthless eventually. But in 2025, if we get the spike in Bitcoin that I expect, this mining equipment might see a bump in value in 2025. So what's the mining equipment right now? Actually, they updated this in a later release. Now they have funded 31 exahash, and they're going to have 31 exahash in 2024. So they have 31 exahash at $18.9 and a terahash, and there's of course 31 million terahash, 1 million terahash in an exahash. So they have 31 million terahashes times $18 a terahash, and so that would be the value of their mining rings right now is $586 million is the value of their mining rigs. How did I come up with that number on a per exahash basis? I'm using the website where miners are bought, and their miners are the latest generation S21s, is what they have. Right now, if you order in bulk, you pay $18.9 per terahash. That's what you pay for. On used websites, you also pay that price. The whole miner, each machine, 234 terawatts. It's 4,229, 4,223. I mean, it's 423. It's about $4,500 roughly. So it's a little bit less if you buy it used. It's a little bit more if you buy it new. Anyways, I want to point out two things about the mining. Is one thing is they actually paid lower than that. If you go look at some of their announcement of how much they paid for his miners, they paid $14 a terahash. So you see, if I'm valuing the miners at $18 a terahash, I'm giving them a nice gain in the value of their miners compared to what they paid. They ordered more than a year ago now, so that's why they got the miners cheaper. It's interesting to note that. Another thing is I want to show you that these miners, these machines, they are fairly profitable. So in this mining calculator, I reused the 3.5 cents per kilowatt hour in the calculation. And if you're curious, each miner is $4,229. So they paid a little bit less than that. They paid about $3,000 a miner. And the profit that they have on those miners is $4,000 profit, $4,000 of electricity what they pay. So they essentially for every dollar spent in electricity, they roughly make a 50% profit right now on these miners. So these are profitable, right? You put a dollar in, you get $2 back. But the thing is that you gotta operate them for 2 years to not only pay for the miners, but also pay for the staff, the labor, etc. But I still believe it's a profitable endeavor to mine when you pay so little for the cost of electricity. The low cost of electricity is essential. And of course, they may be able to make more money from the miners, or the value of these miners may actually be going up, and that would depend on the difficulty. So the value of the miners will go down if the difficulty goes up. So that's the way it works. The difficulty of mining Bitcoin goes up. When the difficulty goes up, of course, you're going to mine less Bitcoin. And as a result of that, your miners are going to become less valuable money-making machines. And so if you look at the mining difficulty, it has increased over the past 90 days, but over the past 30 days, 7 days and 1 day, it stayed roughly flat, just a slight increase. Over 1 year, it's funny how these numbers match up, right? 15% over the past 90 days. Over the past year, I've calculated that the mining difficulty has increased by plus 60% in 1 year. So you would mine that many less Bitcoin. And so these machines, they lose quite a bit of value. And you can look at a longer analysis of how much value they lose. So you can see these machines per terahash. So about a year before IREN ordered its machines, or this is latest wave of machines, these machines were trading at $27 per terahash in December of 2022. Right now, I estimate them to cost $19 a terahash. They were trading at 37. So you see, so the machines lose value over time. Essentially is what I'm trying to say, unless, of course, we get a spike in Bitcoin. If we get a spike in the value of Bitcoin, those machines may go up in value. So what's the conclusion for port A? What is the worth of the value equipment, of the mining equipment? Well, it's $585 million of mining rigs. How much are we going to lose in value over the next 12 months? Well, if Bitcoin stays flat, I'm going to say we're likely going to lose about 50 to 60% of value. But if Bitcoin increases by about 60, 70%, what are we going to do? We're not going to lose as much value. We're going to lose maybe 10% of the value of the miner, maybe 20% of the 585 million. So if Bitcoin stays flat, we're going to see 250, 300 million of the value evaporate. If Bitcoin goes up, this is going to stay roughly flat. And if Bitcoin goes way up, right, like if Bitcoin were to go to 100% or 150%, then in those scenarios, in my view, the value of the miners could increase. And given the stage that we are in the Bitcoin halving cycle, I would say one could make a mild bet that in 25, at some point, the value of these miners could actually increase before eventually losing all of their value. And the best of my reading and my knowledge about this tells me that miners become completely useless after 4 to 5 years. But what happens usually is that those miners are getting retired. Those companies retire the miners, and they resell them on various outlets to either hobbyists or to other mining companies that have cheaper electricity. And in the case of Bitcoin, it'd be tough to find anybody paying cheaper for electricity, but there are some people who pay even zero for electricity, like nation states, for example. So you can resell it. A Bitcoin miner always has resale value. A Bitcoin miner always makes money to someone who has access to free electricity, right? And that's part of the thesis too. You could potentially keep them and put solar panels and just power your Bitcoin miners with solar panels, quote unquote, free energy. So that's also part of the business here. Moving on now to part B. Part B is what is the value of GPUs? And those two are melting in value. So on September 16, IREN acquired 1,080 latest generation Nvidia H200 GPUs, and that was a cost of $44 million, including what? Including the racks, the InfiniBand, the cabling, and the labor. So they paid for the H200s, better than H100s, about $40,000 a piece. I went back to the announcement of when they bought their H100s. The H100s, they had paid about $38,000 a piece for them in February 2024. They are now selling on third-party website for about $21,000. So you've lost quite. You've in 1 year. I believe those GPUs, they roughly lose 50% of their value in 1 year. So the first wave of GPUs that they had, I'm only valuing them at 21,000 a piece. For the 817 is what I'm valuing them at, and I'm valuing the H200s I'm valuing them at 40,000 because they just bought them. They just bought those, so I'm valuing those at 40,000, and I'm valuing those at 21,000 because 21,000 is what they're getting sold on for third-party websites right now. So sorry about that. We have 17 million of H100s right now if you were to sell them, and we have 43 million of H200s, which are still worth 40,000 a piece because they just bought them. So the value of GPUs is about $61 million right now. That is the minor part of the business. I would argue I'm very thankful for this part of the business because that's the reason why the business is cheap. The thesis is not well understood by the market because they have this division. That's kind of what I think. The thesis is cheap because of that. Now, this is where we need to talk about the value of the power access, and we need to talk about the Culper research report, which I'm going to refer to as a short report, because the reason why the stock went down is because a lot of people have said, oh, well, they're greatly overvaluing the value of AI and the value of AI's future. And also a lot of people were saying when this stock was trading near $15, it was trading this high because of the promise of AI. And of course, me, I invest in Bitcoin miners, and so I kind of dismiss AI, right? I look at AI as the cherry on the cake. AI is not my chief reason to buying this company, but a lot of people analyzing this stock were analyzing AI. And that's when we had the short report. And this is not common for me to say that, but I'm going to say that this short report actually was pretty bullish in my view, and they did a pretty good job selling me on the value of their land portfolio, despite them saying that it's not worth a lot. They're actually giving me valuation much higher than what I thought, because if you've been following my mining videos, I've been assigning $300,000 per megawatt of connection. That's all I've been assigning to these miners. This short report is much more optimistic than I am, and so I'm very pleased to see that. So like I said, I was valuing their facilities at $300,000 a megawatt hour based on what CleanSpark recently paid to acquire their sites. Noteworthy to say that in this short report, they also mentioned CleanSpark and used that in their calculation for the low end, but their low end is actually much higher than my low end. So I really was conservative on this one. They're more bullish than me. They say this. They say, and I realize they're probably very bearish compared to a lot of people analyzing this stock, but they are more bullish than me. So they said, as they see it, we believe IREN's existing facilities are worth between 1 and 2 million per megawatt hour. And they were referring to the developed sites at the time, and that was 260 megawatt of power at the time. They're saying that all of those developed sites are worth between 1 and 2 million per megawatt hour, and they do not discuss. They do not grant value for BTCs. This is what I meant here. They do not grant value for BTC. They just talk about AI and the AI potential of the stock. They talk very, very little about BTC. But this is a business that was optimized for mining Bitcoin. And so, assuming that they say that as it sits, their developed infrastructure, their developed facilities are worth between 1 and 2 million per megawatt hour. Well, since then, they have announced and they're on their way to having built out 500 megawatt that are fully developed. So if I take the midpoint of the short seller at 1.5 million per megawatt and I multiply it by 500, that means for the built facilities, I am getting 750 million worth of value as it sits, or as it's going to sit at the end of 2024. That's much more than what I was assigning, and so they consider that valuation bearish, by the way. They consider that quite bearish, and they were saying that a lot of analysts were claiming that IREN was actually having something like 10 million of value per megawatt hour. I did not see this analysis. They view their thing as bearish, and I've been viewing my valuation as even more bearish. What's another question? Well, another question is what's the value of what they have yet to develop? What is the value of what is undeveloped right now? They have about 1,800 megawatt of installed capacity that is not developed yet, that they need to develop. And how much are we paying per megawatt? I was assigning 300,000 a megawatt hour just for the connection, just for what is not developed, because this is what CleanSpark had bought a few weeks back. They had a bunch of undeveloped sites for about 300 a megawatt hour. But I asked GPT, because these are very big industrial sites for IREN, especially Childress. I asked ChatGPT, how much would it cost to connect 100 megawatt hour of power for an industrial site? And let me put this bigger so you can see the response and pause the video. But essentially, ChatGPT is telling me that it would cost anywhere between $10 and $50 million. So the AI gods are saying that it would cost between 100,000 and 500,000 to develop, to connect 1 megawatt to a site, to an industrial site. To connect a megawatt to an industrial site, it would cost, at the midpoint, this is my tradition to always take the midpoint, at the midpoint it would cost 250 megawatt just to connect it. So we have the short report saying a developed site of the quality of IREN, i.e. designed for Bitcoin mining, that site is worth 1.5 million per megawatt when it's developed, and when it's undeveloped, it's worth 250,000 per megawatt per AI, and so that means the total value of the undeveloped power access for 1,810 megawatt, that would be 452 million. So that's a tremendous amount of money too, just by assigning 250,000. And I also want to say, access to that much power, it also passes the sniff test, if I'm going to say, like, because $250,000, right? That would be the cost for 1 megawatt of connection, $250,000. And to give you a sense of scale, 1 megawatt, that's about 700 ohms. 1 megawatt of installed capacity is about 700 ohms. So, does that mean that it's $500 to connect 1 home to a grid? No, it's more. It's actually much more expensive than that when you go smaller in the grid. But it really makes sense to me that 250,000 per 1 megawatt. That seems credible to me, because that amount of power. I mean, we're talking about some serious cabling and some serious power. That would be enough for 700 ohms. And to give you a sense of scale of how much power they've secured 2.31 gigawatt, and how much power. How many ohms is that? 231,000 homes, roughly American homes, by the way. If you're not watching from the US, American homes, and these use more power. 231,000 homes. So that's how much power they are secured. That's a lot of power that they were able to preempt thanks to Bitcoin mining. That is not up for grabs for the AI players. So let me do the sum of the parts of everything I've gone through for IREN. So the market cap. The market cap right now is 1.52 billion. They have no debt. They have cash of 411 million, which means that their enterprise value is 1.1 billion. Right? Then I remove the mining rigs. So the value of the mining rigs, like I said, it's 586 million, and I predict that it will decline in value by about 60% a year. But as of right now, it's still 586 million of the mining rigs. So I'm going to remove that. The value of the AI hardware is 68 million. I'm going to remove that, right? Because it's sellable. It's highly sellable. You can sell those GPUs. The value of the developed facilities is 750 million using the value of the short report. The value of power access, that power access to undeveloped land, and it's 452 million, and I came to that value by looking at one recent acquisition by CleanSpark and by asking an AI about it. And so going back to the total value, so if I just assign a value of 0 to the hardware and the mining rigs, but I keep my value for the land, then the valuation of CleanSpark is a negative, and of IREN is a negative enterprise value. It's an enterprise value of minus 0.94 million. Now, if I remove the hardware, the rigs, as well as the development facilities, as well as the power access, then the value, the adjusted enterprise value, is minus 747 million. So feel free to pause and look at how I calculated this, but in my view, this any way I look at it, if you remove the sellable items from the company, you get to a negative adjusted enterprise value. In other words, this company is trading below net asset value. It's trading below the value of its assets by, in my view, a fairly wide margin, no matter how you put it. And and it's also still trading under the value of its assets, even if you assume that the rigs and the hardware are worth 0, which they are obviously not worth 0 just yet. So let's now calculate the ratios. Why did I put in the title of this video that this company has a ratio of 3, a very, very low multiple? Well, in order to calculate the ratio, I need to figure out how much money they're going to make. First of all, please note I'm using enterprise value, and I'm not using the negative enterprise value that I had, adjusted enterprise value. I'm just using the enterprise value, but just know there's a major distinction because a lot of that enterprise value can be explained by what they own. So I'm using the enterprise value, right? And I am going to ratio that against how much money they will make for a full year. And their press release on September 16, 2024 gives me very useful information. They are saying that at the end of 2024, and through 2025, the proportion at least, but I'm going to assume it's going to be throughout 2025, next 12 months after 2024, they are expecting a profit of 32 million for AI cloud services and a profit of 304 million for Bitcoin mining. So you see the GPU business, the AI business is still only 10% of the business. So what do I get if in their expected profit? For their expected profit, I am getting, if I analyze the end of 2024 profit for a 12-month period, that would be the full year 2025, I'm getting an estimate of 336 million in quote-unquote profit, economic profit. And the enterprise value today is 1.1 billion. And so the ratio is 3.3x forward next 12 months, starting at the end of 24, next 12 months economic profit for this company. Who knows how the accounting and the GAAP rules will translate that in terms of a PE? Who knows? But as far as what interests me, which is their economic profit against their theoretical value of today, what I am getting is a multiple of 3 on the money they're going to make. And remember two things. IREN does not hold Bitcoin. They sell it to fund their operations, to, get some cash on the balance sheet, and obviously to pay the electricity. And IREN also has raised as 411 million in cash. They have raised that money. They have money on the balance sheet to fund some of the growth that they are going through right now and they're expected to have. And like I said, I'm using 336 million for a full year of 2025, and you may say, "Oh, it's naive. They just put an annualized number, and I'm just extrapolating that to a full year." Well, I believe it could go both ways, right? I believe they could make more money if Bitcoin explodes to the upside, or they could make less money if Bitcoin stays at the same value or even drops, right? But the difficulty goes up. So that's why I cut it right in the middle. I'm gonna assume they're gonna keep going, but keep in mind they could make much more money if we get an explosion in the price of Bitcoin. And lastly, and this goes in my favor, these $400 million in cash, they're going to be turned into hash rate. They're going to be turned into more profit for them. So I think this number, actually, you may argue this number will grow. And by the way, let me just put this bigger. If you want to see how they calculated, their prediction for profit, you can see it right here. Feel free to read it right here. So let me conclude. Let me have a final conclusion where I am going to finish with the dilution and the stock itself. So there has been a lot of dilution on this stock. They have raised money wisely, if you ask me. This is an excerpt from their initial public offering, and you can see they were raising money, cash that came in on the balance sheet, that bought the land, that bought the equipment. They were paying $28. They were getting $28 for those shares in the early days. Now, you may notice they've issued quite a bit of shares in the beginning of 2024. Why did they do that? Because look at the stock price. The stock price, well, I guess not entirely the beginning of 2024, but the stock price towards the mid part of the year, the stock price was quite high. And of course, they are going to want to issue shares when the stock price is high. This is an excerpt from the conference call. So they have an ATM. If you don't know what an ATM is, it allows them to issue shares whenever they find the price compelling. And so they were able to issue 463,000 shares at the last report for $5.2 million of cash proceeds. So what that tells me is that they haven't issued a lot of shares at all lately, and they've been very mild on the shares, and they still have potentially $223 million worth of shares in their ATM, potentially, if they were to need it. But my guess is that they're not going to be raising more capital at $7. My guess is that they're going to wait for the stock to trend back up to 12, maybe 14, 15, 16, something like that. So they may sell more shares when the stock is up. I think the numbers we had reported yesterday and the numbers of the last quarter show us that really the shares outstanding from IREN have been flat now starting for the second quarter. That's not enough of a look back, of course, but the dilution that they have is they only have 223 million remaining. I think for IRIS, most of the dilution has already happened, and so this is why I like the stock. I think it's a highly undervalued company in my view. So to conclude, this was not financial advice. This is no investment advice. This is just entertainment. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.